Hello and welcome to yet another video in the Logical Fallacy series. Thank you for a good response to the Appeal to Authority Fallacy episode. Glad to know that many of you liked it. Today we will look at a logical fallacy which is exhibited by most of us Indians. In fact, you can say it is in our blood. Take a look at this famous dialogue from the movie Mohabbatein.
परंपरा, प्रतिष्ठा, अनुशासन, ये इस गुरुकुल के 3 स्तंभ हैं। ये वो आदर्श हैं जिससे हम आपका आने वाला कल बनाते हैं।
Yes, today we will look at appeal to tradition. While an appeal to tradition may sound convincing, you shouldn't let it fool you. This video will help you to be in the lookout for arguments that take this form, and it will help you to prevent yourself from accidentally using it yourself. Welcome to Pale Blue Thoughts, the channel which promotes scientific temper and denounces pseudoscience. An appeal to tradition is a logical fallacy people use to claim that a current circumstance, process or statement is true or superior to an alternative because it is how it's always been done. There isn't data or evidence proving that such a belief is, in fact, better. It is just assumed to be so because of its tradition or history of producing favorable outcomes. You would see this fallacy in action almost everywhere, in politics, in religion, your home, with your parents and family, and even in the workplace. People are reluctant to change from their old set of beliefs because that is how they have done it for so long. People are set in their ways. They fear the unknown, and unless the change results in a direct benefit to them, they are not motivated to make it. Let us first look at the logical form of the fallacy. X has been done for a long time, therefore X is right or good. This reasoning is fallacious because it relies on historical preferences rather than facts to prove its point. Because there is no data, there is not enough documentation to assert a claim. In fact, admitting that the only reason behind something is historical preference highlights the fact that the speaker has no supportive evidence. An appeal to tradition makes 2 faulty assumptions. The old way of thinking was correct because it was proven at some point, and 2, any justification that was used in the past is still valid. But the truth is, a tradition could have been initially based on a false premise, and even if something was true at one time, circumstances can change that revoke this truth. Take the case of Ayurveda. At one time, with a limited understanding of the human body, ancient yogis wrote some highly imaginative concepts about the human body. They believed in the human systems of Vata, Pitta and Kapha because they thought that there was a vital force that was present within us which drove our engines. They also thought that plants were provided by nature for us to make food and to provide us with medicines. However, today we know that the humoral theory is false and that plants are not designed for our food and that they contain a lot of chemicals that could harm us. The plants make these poisons to ward them off from their enemies, and they store their food for their own consumption and for propagating their species. This is a typical example of a tradition that was based on a false premise, the humoral theory. Today circumstances have changed and we know much more truths, but many people still like to cling on to the old belief because their logic is that it is how it has always been done and there is no need to change. All forms of alternative medicine are known for their long histories that have stood the test of time, which makes alternative medicine practitioners insist that it is more relevant than modern scientific findings. Arguments in favor of alternative medicine are loaded with logical fallacies, and the appeal to tradition is certainly one of them. Having a long tradition of use does not imply safety and efficacy. For that, you need to prove it using the much more reliable scientific methods. The appeal to tradition fallacy is very similar to the bandwagon fallacy, which is based on the assumption that the majority's opinion is automatically correct due to the number of people who believe in it. However, this logic only proves that a belief is common, not that it is accurate. One typical example that you most often see around are family traditions. Our family has a long tradition of male family members becoming chartered accountants, My great-grandfather, grandfather and father were all chartered accountants. Thus, it is right and the only option for me to become an accountant too. Whether I can correctly tally a balance sheet is not a criteria. Now think of a child in the family who has dreams of pursuing a career in arts or sports. Think of his life if he is forced to choose a career which does not interest him or her. Look at another example. Gays have never had the legal right to marry. Therefore, it must be wrong and we shouldn't be legalizing gay marriages now. Again, see how detrimental is this sort of thinking is for our society if we continue to live with such a fallacy. There are few things in life that involve the level of tradition that religion does. While each religion may have its own traditions, they are all ancient and people are scared to question its traditions. People have been practicing religions for thousands of years. With this in mind, some may argue that at least some form of religion must be true because so many people have believed in religious systems for so long. This argument is an appeal to tradition because the only evidence it offers that proves the validity of the argument in favor of religion is the span of its duration. So it may be true that people have generally believed in religion for longer than they haven't, but the conclusion that religion is true cannot be made on this observation. We would need more evidence about religion than its age before we could accept it as being either true or false, which makes this argument a logical fallacy. Also consider how other age-old arguments have failed in the past. The claim that Earth is flat or the Earth is the center of the universe. Even when almost all of the people on Earth believed that the Earth was flat or that it was stationary, the Earth was casually orbiting the Sun in the oblate spheroid form. Yet another appeal to tradition happens with festivals. Some festivals like Diwali had lighting diyas as a tradition, but over time people have resorted to burning crackers and polluting the environment. That is now a tradition and people often react illogically when the government bans crackers, for instance. Ganesh Chaturthi is yet another festival where idols are immersed in river bodies which pollutes them. Even though this is common knowledge, people are not willing to change things. Bakrid, a festival which glorifies the story of a father attempting to kill his own son because of a dream that he saw, and to this day hundreds of thousands of goats are sacrificed every year. All examples of appeal to tradition. Very often traditions stem from religious or archaic beliefs, and until people question the logic and reasoning behind such traditions, people who are negatively affected by such traditions will continue to suffer. Just because it was acceptable in past cultures and times does not mean it is acceptable today. Think racism, sexism, slavery, and you will get the idea. It is also widely used in marketing. Pickles that are just like how your grandmother used to make, or curry powder that your mom used to make, are a few examples. Another example is the notion that just because something is old, then it must be good. You often see it with alternate medicine systems like Ayurveda and yoga, where the only criteria people claim it is good is because it has been practiced for centuries. There is no other evidence for the benefit of the claims. The opposite of appeal to tradition fallacy is one called appeal to novelty. It occurs when someone asserts that something must be true or good because it is new. For example, if someone says that a certain product must be better than its old version solely on the basis that it is newer, they are guilty of committing an appeal to novelty. So how can we overcome this fallacy? If someone uses this logical fallacy, then they should be presented with a contrary question. Why shouldn't something be done this way? Thus forcing them to think of the alternate option or picture a situation in which the tradition has been broken. This can help them realize that there are other ways to successfully get things accomplished. Like other fallacies, claims regarding this logical fallacy aren't necessarily untrue. The problem is when the only evidence offered is the long-standing history of an issue or phenomenon. After all, if an idea can stand the test of time, it can also be validated through retesting. So retesting the logic or validation of an age-old claim is the right thing to do. So make them relook at the same situation from another angle. Now before we end, for years people who liked a YouTube video would always subscribe to that channel and press the bell icon. So if you liked my video, do subscribe and hit that bell because that is what is the right thing to do. I will see you in yet another video. Until then, it's bye-bye from Pale Blue Thoughts.